Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. AHS and the AUP announce a new deal with auxiliary nursing staff who play a vital role in our healthcare system. The Pope is coming to Canada and will make a stop right here in Alberta. We will explain the reason behind the papal visit. And astronomy fans are in for a special treat as the first flower moon will coincide with a total lunar eclipse. We will tell you when.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Health Services and the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees have come together on a new collective agreement that was made official as of today. The new 4-year retroactive deal expires March 31st, 2024, and sets out the terms and conditions of more than 18,000 auxiliary nursing staff who play a vital role in our healthcare system. Both parties will work together to bring in more nurses, as well as retain the ones already working to some of the province's rural and remote communities. The Alberta government announced that it will open another 50 permanent ICU beds. Officials say 19 are already open, and the remaining 31 will be open by the end of September. Premier Jason Kenney says this is a big deal.
I know 50 actually doesn't sound like a lot, 50 in a province of 4.5 million people, but it's a lot compared to the 173. That's been our baseline since AHS started 12 years ago. So this is, as Minister Copping said, the largest increase, actually the only increase in the number of baseline ICU beds since AHS came into being, and the largest increase that we can see in Alberta health history. So this is a big deal. And because just think about the staffing ratios here. You need about 5 staff. It depends on the situation, but 3.5 to 5 staff for every ICU bed. And we've had 830 ICU nurses to staff, for example, because they're not all present on the same shift at the same time. We needed 830 ICU nurses to staff 173 baseline beds. So what would this overall increasing by 50, the complement of baseline permanent ICU beds represents hundreds of additional healthcare workers.
Now, Shannon Phillips, who's the NDP finance critic, responded to the Kenney announcement of more ICU beds. Phillips says there are not enough staff to operate the beds we already have. She says the UCP war on frontline professionals has created a profound crisis on healthcare here in our province.
The UCP have torn up contracts, slashed wages, and put our system through excruciating pressure. Right now, as we speak, there are 21 communities in Alberta where the hospital is partially closed due to staff shortages caused by the UCP. In Red Deer, we saw 14 ambulances backed up in the hospital parking lot waiting to get into the emergency room. Days later, Red Deer Hospital had to divert all of its general surgeries to other communities. One cannot deliver a baby at hospitals in Barrhead, St. Paul, Rimbey, Sundre, Three Hills, Provost, Wainwright, Whitecourt, all due to staffing shortages.
It appears as though Lethbridge isn't the only place feeling a doctor shortage in southern Alberta. The town of Fort Macleod is dealing with a very similar issue. In an attempt to recruit more doctors, the town is offering a $10,000 incentive for physicians who sign a 5-year commitment through AHS. An official with the town says they hope this incentive will help with the doctor shortage, as there are only 2 working doctors in Fort Macleod right now.
It's very evident the province is experiencing a doctor shortage. And like I said, there are many rural communities that need a doctor. There are some programs out there working with those communities and working with doctors to try to get them placed there. And so we just decided that this might entice them to come to our community. And we feel like once they're here, they'd really be able to experience the great community that we have and, hopefully get them to stay much longer term than just 5 years.
Now, anyone who's interested in signing on is being asked to contact the town of Fort Macleod directly. Volunteers have begun checking voter identification in the mail in review of Premier Jason Kenney's leadership. In a bid to make the process as transparent as possible, the party has set up live cams on its website so viewers can watch the work being done. The results are to be announced next Wednesday, as Kenney needs 50 plus 1% support to stay on as party leader. Premier Kenney is at odds with some backbenchers who say he's running an unpopular, tight-fisted government doomed to lose the next election to the opposition NDP. Premier Jason Kenney is off to Washington, D.C. this weekend to chat with the U.S. Senate Energy Committee as he continues to promote Alberta's energy sector. Now, when it comes to our oil and gas sector, would people in Quebec be more open to potentially building a pipeline so that folks in central Canada can receive our Alberta oil? Dave Naylor, editor with the Western Standard, gives us his thoughts.
People down east in Montreal and Toronto who are now paying $2 a liter to fill up their car, and along with the rising price of inflation, I did a story this week on people having to take second jobs and postpone retirement and cancel holidays because the cost of living is just too much. So people in Quebec may be saying, a pipeline kind of sounds good right now because it just cost me $100 to fill up my truck.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Dave Naylor of the Western Standard and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up after business news. Now, speaking of Jeanette, she's in now with an early peek at the weekend weather forecast. Jeanette, a lot of the clouds we saw earlier today should clear out, and it looks like a pretty nice weekend shaping up. A great weekend to maybe head out to the lake or mountains.
Yeah, and it's about time too, wouldn't you say, Hal? I know I for sure am ready for some summer activities. But yes, should be a lovely weekend ahead of us. Clouds clearing around midnight tonight, making way for some sunny skies tomorrow. A little bit windy though. This evening we're looking at winds from the west, gusting to 50 up to 70 kilometers per hour. Those winds sticking around for Saturday, up to 50 per hour, but mainly sunny skies, a little bit increasing clouds later on in the day on Saturday. After that, it should be sunshine from here on out. I'll have all those details coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The Vatican announced that Pope Francis will be coming to Canada in July. He'll be visiting the cities of Edmonton, Quebec City, and Iqaluit and Nunavut. Officials say as part of the Pope's reconciliation tour, he will hear the stories of residential school survivors and to address the ongoing trauma faced by Canada's Indigenous peoples. The Archbishop of the Catholic Archdiocese of Edmonton says the pontiff is limited by mobility issues, but plans to visit a residential school site and will repeat his apology over the Catholic Church's involvement in residential schools.
Now, the Holy Father is coming to meet with the Indigenous peoples of this land, and he's coming on a pilgrimage of healing, of reconciliation, and of hope. This will be the fourth papal journey to Canada since the last one of John Paul II in 2002. So we are very happy, we're delighted to welcome Pope Francis here among us, and we're very grateful to him for having accepted the invitation from the Indigenous peoples, from the Canadian bishops, and from the federal government to visit us here on our common homeland.
Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke earlier today about Pope Francis's upcoming visit to Canada and its importance.
It will be extremely important that he deliver the apology from the Catholic Church to residential school survivors and their families. It's going to be an important time in the path of reconciliation.
Ukrainian and British officials say Russia suffered heavy losses while trying to cross a river in eastern Ukraine where Moscow's military campaign is faltering. Ukraine's Airborne Forces Command has released images of what it says are a damaged Russian pontoon bridge and several damaged or destroyed vehicles. Britain's defense minister says conducting a river crossing in a contested environment is extremely risky and points to the pressure Russian commanders are currently under. Canada is being held up as an example for other G7 countries for its use of seized Russian assets to help pay for rebuilding Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister is urging his country's supporters to put further pressure on Russia's economy. He made the comments recently at the G7 summit in Germany.
And today I asked G7 countries to adopt legislation and put in place all necessary procedures needed to seize Russian sovereign assets and give them to Ukraine. Give them to Ukraine for Ukraine to use this money to rebuild our country, to reconstruct our country after all the damage inflicted on us. Canada has already done so, and I have a feeling that others will reach that point rather sooner than later.
Canada's Melanie Joly tweeted photos of herself and Ukraine's foreign minister saying she will always find time to connect with him. A 21-year-old Russian soldier is on trial in Kyiv for killing an unarmed Ukrainian civilian. It's the first war crime prosecution of a member of the Russian military after 11 weeks of bloodshed in Ukraine. The captured soldier is accused of shooting a 62-year-old Ukrainian man in the head through an open car window during the first days of the war. Had she known about an Alberta engineering technology program through ASSET, A newcomer to Lethbridge says she would have been able to fast-track her education after moving from Ukraine with her son 6 years ago. As BCN's Angela Stewart tells us, the woman hopes to inspire more foreign-trained professionals to escape the war in Ukraine and come to Canada.
Didn't know about that program during that time.
Nothing but her belongings and her young son in hand. Mila Wagner made the brave decision to relocate to Canada after the Crimea invasion in 2014. Arriving in Canada in 2016 and having earned multiple engineering technology-related degrees back home, Wagner hopes she would have been able to have landed a suitable career.
I graduated 2 universities. I got a bachelor degree in land management, cartography and geodesy, and I got a master degree in land management and cadastre. When I was trying to find a job, my education and credentials was not fully accepted.
Enrolling herself at Lethbridge College in the 2-year civil engineering technology diploma program, Wagner worked menial jobs on the side just to be able to provide for her son.
I didn't make a lot of money, and sometimes I had to go to a food bank just to get an additional food. It would have been definitely a game changer if I would have known about that competency-based assessment program.
Now happily working in her profession and having graduated from the college, looking back, Wagner says she wishes she would have learned about the Association of Science and Engineering Technology Professionals of Alberta.
While we've completely adapted our program for assessing internationally trained applicants, they often don't know about it. And I think that's demonstrated by Mila's situation.
Through ASET's program, Wagner could have fast-tracked her studies in as little as 6 months to a year.
If they can meet those levels of assessment, including sufficient command of English to be able to work technically, we can have them working in almost no time.
Through her story, Wagner hopes to inspire newcomers to Canada, especially with the current war happening overseas.
Reach out the asset, and so they will help to navigate them through those differences.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
A fundraising race is taking place for a very good cause on May 15th in Edmonton and through a virtual format. The Run Wild event will be raising money for various child and youth centres across Alberta, including the Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Centre here in Lethbridge. Over $572,000 has been raised since 2011. As Micah Quinn reports now, organizers say this is a pretty special event.
The event basically works as an opportunity for people to run in their community at their time, on their kind of terms and the distance that they choose.
Grant Fedoruk, the president of Leading Edge Physiotherapy and one of the founders of Run Wild, says the event was inspired by the group wanting to make a difference in the community through its work with the Zebra Child Protection Center. The funds for the run will go to the center along with the St. Albert Seniors Association.
But we know that when we bring people together, a great deal of good can come from it. So really that's one of the missions, is bring communities together, virtually or otherwise.
A portion of the proceeds for the run will also go towards supporting the Caribou Child and Youth Center and the Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Center here in Lethbridge.
Our goal right now, we're proud to say that we got a great head start on it. So our goal was to raise $100,000. We met that goal pretty quickly, and we've raised our goal to $200,000, of which we will give a portion, and we spread that portion across all of our charities, which will include the Chinook Child Advocacy Center.
The manager of the center, Cheryl Patterson, says 30% of the $642,000 goal for the construction of the center has been raised so far.
So events like Run Wild are really important to raise awareness in our communities. Because raising awareness helps educate people on topics that are new to them, but also encourages people to participate in bringing change and helping us develop our center. There may be a delay slightly to have us open in the fall, but we are keeping our fingers crossed for opening in the summer.
The run is designed for all ages and abilities. With a 5K, 10K, and half marathon, you can either run or walk. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Astronomy lovers are in for a real treat in the early morning hours on Monday. The first flower moon of the year is coinciding with a total lunar eclipse in the sky to create a supermoon. The lunar eclipse will begin around 9:30 p.m. Tom Anderson, the president of the Lethbridge Astronomy Society, explained where the red color of the flower moon comes from.
The moon during a total lunar eclipse turns a really, really dark coppery red. And if you imagine that you're standing on the surface of the moon and you're looking out at the Earth and the sun behind it, as the Earth moves in front of the sun, you're going to see a ring of fire around the Earth. And that is all of the sunrises and sunsets that are going on the Earth at that time. And that's where that red color comes from. So that's kind of poetic, I think, that when you see the red on the lunar eclipse, you're seeing the light from all of the sunrises and sunsets.
Really looking forward to seeing that. Anderson says no special equipment is needed for the viewing. The flower moon will be visible in the nighttime sky just after midnight on May 16th, and the Society will be hosting a viewing party at Popson Park in Lethbridge. Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair says extreme weather events are increasing across Canada. Blair says Public Safety Canada responded to 14 requests for community assistance related to wildfires over the past couple of years. He only received 4 in the 5 years before that. He says the increasing frequency of fires means it's important that the federal and provincial governments learn from the blaze that destroyed Lytton, BC last year.
Yesterday, I had the opportunity to travel to Lytton. Lytton, of course, last June 30th was a community that was devastated by wildfire. It was a community which is both a municipality but also First Nation, impacted by 45 minutes of conflagration, which consumed those communities and revealed to us a number of vulnerabilities that we need to respond to. And so, as we gather together and work together, as a province, as a federal government, as a community, and as First Nations, we gather together to rebuild that community. It's critically important that we learn the lessons of that experience so that in the future we can respond more quickly, we can respond more effectively, and we can ensure that our communities, as we rebuild them, are more resilient.
Blair made the comments in Vancouver, flanked by other ministers offering federal support measures in preparation for another wildfire season in British Columbia. Mission Aviation Fellowship has teamed up with Rotarians Against Malaria to help protect the people of Papua New Guinea from malaria. Now, the two groups have been working to protect people in the region for 10 years by providing free mosquito nets. We have more now in this report.
Mission Aviation Fellowship and Rotarians Against Malaria have partnered together to protect isolated Papua New Guineans from a disease which kills hundreds of thousands of people globally every year. In 2022 alone, MAF and RAM have delivered more than 34,000 mosquito nets to 26 airstrips, protecting thousands of lives from malaria in some of the island's most remote communities. MAF's Siobhan Cole is behind the complicated logistics to make all of this happen.
That's where I come in to arrange all of the details and pull it all together so that when the pilots turn up for work, they know where they're flying to today, how many nets are being loaded onto their aircraft. I work with the ground staff so they can weigh the net, so everything is prepared. They know what the plan and where everything is going to.
And MAF is helping RAM fulfill their long-term goal to eradicate malaria from the face of the earth using proven interventions, including these free mosquito nets. Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
Great cause. We enjoyed a little more moisture here in southwestern Alberta again today, but fortunately some of the rain clouds will be leaving us, bringing us lots of sunshine for the weekend. Complete weather details are on deck. It was nice that we had a little more moisture earlier today. Good news for our producers. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, the rain cloud should be leaving us, bringing lots of sunshine just in time for the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. A fair amount of sunshine expected this weekend. Hell, as we're looking at Saturday, we're going to see some increasing clouds later on in the day. A bit windy, too. We're looking at wind gusts up to 50 kilometers per hour, high of 15 degrees, 20 degrees on Sunday. Lots of sunshine. Should be a lovely day. Making way for a high of 22 on Monday under sunny skies, and sunshine on Tuesday with a high of 19 degrees. Wednesday, a mix of sun and cloud, high 17. Chance of showers beginning Wednesday evening, lasting through until Thursday, where we're looking at a 60% chance of showers with a high of 12 degrees. So the average high for this time of year is 18 degrees. We're going to hit that mark and above it beginning this weekend already. Average low low for this time of year, 4 degrees, 28. That was where we were sitting in 1976. That was the hottest on record for this day. Coldest was -6 back in 1943. 5:50, that is when the sun rose this morning and our sunset this evening at 9:06 p.m., giving us 15 hours and 16 minutes of daylight. Looking to the west coast tomorrow, seeing some rain developing in Victoria. Should last through the morning and then clear up in the afternoon. 13 the high, a bit windy in the Juan de Fuca Strait as well. Vancouver's high 13, expecting some rain showers as well. 16 the high in Edmonton tomorrow under sunny skies, and a high of 15 degrees tomorrow in Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud. As we look to the rest of the prairies, 18 the high in Saskatoon with partly cloudy skies there. Regina looking at some rain showers, high 13, high of 12 in Winnipeg with some rainy showers there as well. Looking at some wind gusts 30 to 50 kilometers per hour there. As we're looking to the middle part of the country, this is where it's warm, mainly sunny. We're looking at humidex as well, so it's going to be a bit humid. 25 is the high in Toronto, a little cooler near Lake Ontario. 32 the high in Ottawa, and 30 degrees expected tomorrow in Montreal. Could see a bit of shower activity as well. Fredericton, sunny in the morning, increasing clouds, and then they're going to get those showers. 30 degrees the high, 26 the high in Halifax. 13 in Charlottetown. That's quite a variation in temperature there, but sunny skies nonetheless. 8 degrees the high in St. John's, Newfoundland, expecting 2 to 4 millimeters of showers there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Tesla billionaire Elon Musk says his planned $44 billion purchase of Twitter is temporarily on hold, pending details on spam and fake accounts on the social media platform. It appears to be another twist amid signs of internal turmoil over the proposed acquisition. Twitter shares initially fell more than 20% in pre-market trading, but after Musk tweeted he remained committed to the deal, the platform regained some ground. Musk, who is the world's richest person, decided to waive due diligence when he agreed to buy Twitter on April 25th in an effort to get the company to accept its best and final offer. Canadian Tire is reporting sales gains across the board with higher first quarter profit and revenue compared to last year. Revenue for the quarter was up from $3.32 to $3.84 billion. Comparable sales at its Canadian Tire retail business grew 4.5%. Its Mark's banner, meanwhile, was up 17.1%, and sales at its Sport Chek stores were up 10.2%. Canadian Tire says it will now pay a dividend of $1.62 per share. That is up from $1.30. Ontario Conservative MP John Nader says due to inflation, farmers are having a very difficult time. He recently asked the Trudeau Liberals what their plan is to help producers in regards to the high cost of fertilizer.
With the spring planting season upon us, farmers in Perth, Wellington, and across Canada are on the land growing the food that will quite literally feed our country. Agriculture is always an unpredictable business, with so many variables that all impact a farmer's bottom line and their hopes to be in the black when the last field is harvested in the fall. But while farmers are prepared for these uncertainties that come with the business, what they are not prepared for are the uncertainties placed on them by the government. For over 10 weeks now, the Minister of Agriculture has refused to clarify whether fertilizer orders placed prior to March 2nd would be subject to the 35% tariff. Since these orders were placed prior to sanctions being in place, the tariffs only impact Canadian farmers and agribusinesses and have zero impact on Vladimir Putin and his thugs. Mr. Speaker, I implore the Minister of Agriculture to finally stand up for Canadian farmers and farm families.
Of course, we're working closely with industry. We have to make sure that we don't give incentives to businesses to continue to deal with businesses that are under Russian control. We want to make sure that farmers get fertilizers at a fair price. We'll continue to work with them to ensure that they get a fair price.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 400 points on the day to finish at 20,099. The Dow was up 466 points to 32,196. The S&P 500 was up 93 points to 4,023. And the Nasdaq was up 434 on the day to 11,805. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $3.90 to $110.03 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 11 cents to $7.63 U.S. Gold was down 10.03 to $18.11.80 U.S. an ounce. And silver was up 44 cents to $21.11 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $15.24 per bushel. Barley's at $10.23. Canola's at $26.74, and corn is at $12.40 per bushel. Live cattle were up 43 cents to $132.08. Feeder cattle were up $1 to $157.88, and lean hogs were up $3.28 to $100.75. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 77.45 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Alberta Health Services and the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees have come together on a new collective agreement that was made official as of today. The new 4-year retroactive deal expires March 31st, 2024, and sets out the terms and conditions for more than 18,000 auxiliary nursing staff who play a critical role in our healthcare system. With gas hitting $2 a litre in many parts of the country, is it time to revisit building a pipeline from Alberta to central Canada? Dave Naylor, editor with the Western Standard, gives us his thoughts next. But first, here's a look at some of these special events happening right here in southwestern Alberta.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. The IG Wealth Management Walk for Alzheimer's is Canada's biggest fundraising event for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Proceeds from this event go toward providing access to free support services for families affected by these diseases, plus funding for groundbreaking research. This fun, family-friendly 2.5-kilometer walk is taking place in Lethbridge Saturday, May 28th at Henderson Lake Park, beginning at 9 a.m. Registration is free and can be done online at support.alzheimer.ca. Big Brothers Big Sisters in Lethbridge is looking for volunteers to mentor children and youth in their various programs. Volunteers commit to 1 2 to 3 hour visit per week for 1 year. They have many kids on their wait list that are looking for a big brother or sister. Make a difference in a child's life and start something big. To apply, visit lethbridge.bigbrothersbigsisters.ca, and for more information, call 403-328-9355. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
I think most Albertans would agree that we see ourselves as a bit unique in the Confederation of Canada. One thing that has set us apart in the past has been our oil and gas resources and the battle with the federal government over those resources. Well, this week has been another interesting one, and in spite of all the politics, Albertans keep moving forward. Joining me today to talk about Alberta and our business and politics is editor for the Western Standard, Dave Naylor. Dave, thanks so much for joining us here once again today.
Oh, my pleasure, Jeanette, anytime.
Great. So, Dave, this past Wednesday was the deadline for all votes needing to be in for the members of the UCP party to have their say on the leadership of Jason Kenney. So we're now less than a week away from the results of that leadership review being announced. This topic's obviously dominated the conversations of many Albertans. So do you think Jason Kenney really deserved a leadership review?
Well, I mean, if you look at his performance, he's rated the worst premier in the country, mainly due to his COVID vaccine response and bringing in COVID passports and shutting businesses down. So if you're just judging by the polls, Jeanette, no, he should have resigned a long time ago, but he's chosen to stay on and fight it out. So the voting is now done. If your postmark is later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, you're out of luck now. So for the next week, UCP scrutineers are going through each ballot, making sure it's legit, making sure whoever did the voting is a party member. And then once they've confirmed that, they're putting the vote into a super secret box for Deloitte to count next Wednesday. Of course, as Brian Jean points out, it's when Deloitte gets all the ballots, and okay, everything's going to be good. The integrity will be fine, but it's what happens before they get the ballots. And it looks like Elections Alberta is investigating some bulk membership buying that Western Standard reported on a couple of months ago. Several credit cards buying several thousand memberships. So, you know, it's hard to see. Nobody is going to trust the results. Everybody, no matter which way it is, if Kenney loses, if Kenney wins, the whole process has been tarnished, in my opinion, and there's not a lot of trust that's going to be out there for the final result.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Dave. And of course, you mentioned Brian Jean. So earlier this week, Mr. Jean was stirring the pot with accusations of that huge multiple membership buys, which you just mentioned. And he attributes this, he attributed obviously this to Jason Kenney's campaign. So Dave, what's the story behind this?
Well, as CBC just reported it last week, of course, they could have read it in the Western Standard 2 months ago, but we won't go there. It all comes from the last days of the campaign, the last month of the campaign, where bulk memberships were being bought in primarily ethnic ridings, and they were being bought by just a small handful of credit card numbers. So, thousands of members were allegedly being signed up by a single credit card. So obviously it's concerning. At the time, we went to the UCP and they said, well, you know what? We're checking every single ballot to make sure that it was that person who bought it and they're officially a party member and they were charged for it and everything is above board. But like I said, the process has been so flawed, and changing it from an in-person vote to a mail-in vote. And from the beginning to the end, it was an utter fiasco of organization. So that's why I say at the end of the day, nobody's going to really have a good faith in what the final result is.
Yeah. Is there a record to be set on what those credit card purchases actually were, or is it's still being investigated?
Well, it's still being investigated. We understand that there was memberships actually bought by these credit card numbers. Elections Alberta, is being Elections Alberta. They won't even comment whether they have launched an investigation, but I'm sure they probably have. And there was, Brian Jean made a formal complaint, but go back to the 2017 leadership campaign for Jason Kenney and the so-called kamikaze candidate. They still haven't finished that investigation, and that was 5 years ago. So Jason Kenney could win 3 more mandates and retire an old man before Elections Alberta figures out what went wrong or what went right in this particular vote.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think this makes Brian Jean look with all of this coming out?
Well, I mean, it's not going to make him look any worse. The day, even well before he was elected, 2 years ago, he said Kenney should go. And he was a very vocal sideline critic for 2 years, and then obviously ran for the UCP nomination, won that, and then won the by-election, and is now a full-fledged member of caucus. And he's continued to say whenever there's a microphone in front of him that Jason Kenney should go. And he will run, several other people have said they will run, but it's very difficult once you've got somebody that's within the caucus working for its own demise. So it's going to be an uncomfortable relationship, and I guess that's what needs to be answered if Kenney does win and does stay on. MLAs like Brian Jean, like Peter Guthrie, others who have been fairly critical of him. Are they going to stay in caucus, or are they going to leave and cross the floor? So, whichever way the votes get, the political situation in Alberta is going to remain interesting for a long time to come.
Yeah, 100%. So getting back to Jason Kenney's leadership review. So one thing that we noticed here was the few people who came out of the woodwork to express their interest in that leadership position. Obviously, being a premier is a very tough job. But Dave, what's your opinion of the initial slate of contenders?
Well, really, there's only 2, and that's because all the other ones are still in Jason Kenney's cabinet. People like Casey Madhu and Doug Schweitzer, they would be good candidates for the leadership, but they're not going to say until after the vote. And if the vote goes Kenney's way, they're not going to say at all. They're going to continue to be loyal soldiers. So once next Wednesday come around and Kenney loses, if he loses, it'll be a race on Thursday morning to announce who's going to run. The two main candidates so far are Danielle Smith and Brian Jean, of course. But if Kenny does go down, you can expect at least probably 3 to 4 current cabinet ministers, and maybe even some federal minister or federal MPs. And who knows? Once a leadership race is on, you never know who may run.
Okay, so let's move on from this leadership quagmire and focus on Alberta. So, Dave, earlier this week, Alberta's top court used some very strong words to say that the federal government's environmental impact law is unconstitutional. Do you think that this will lead to an ongoing court battle?
Well, within moments of the Alberta court striking it down, Jason Kenney said he was taking it to the Supreme Court. Sorry, not Jason Kenney, obviously Justin Trudeau. Kenney held a press conference that morning, and he was jubilant. He was walking on air. He hasn't had a victory in a long time, and he felt good with this one. Trudeau does what Trudeau does, and blamed everything on Stephen Harper. Said he was going to take it to the Supreme Court. And as Trudeau pointed out, the last time Alberta Court of Appeal struck something down as unconstitutional, it was the carbon tax. That went to the Supreme Court, and they ruled the opposite, that it was constitutional. So Kenny's, you got to remember that the Supreme Court is stacked with Liberal appointees or Stephen Harper appointees that are, mainly from the central part of the country. So I don't know how quickly the Supreme Court can get this on their docket, but I don't see it coming up in the real near future, Jeanette.
Have we seen court battles like this between the feds and Alberta over oil and gas before?
There's been various court battles when Alberta threatened to turn off the taps into British Columbia. That went to court, and Alberta actually won that one. There's been ongoing battles, the carbon tax at various levels of courts. So government lawyers because they can get rich doing this, right? It goes on for years, and they get lots of billable hours. But they're constantly suing each other, not just on oil and gas, but on a lot of issues.
In your opinion, is this a move by the Liberal government to just see if they can maybe move that goalpost on the division of powers and charter rights?
Maybe. I mean, it's different times, right? When the No More Pipeline bill came in, people were not paying $2 for a liter of gas. Now the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces shows how the world's supply can be driven into chaos. So people down east in Montreal and Toronto who are now paying $2 a liter to fill up their car, and along with the rising price of inflation, we did a story this week on people having to take second jobs and postpone retirement and cancel holidays because the cost of living is just too much. So people in Quebec may be saying, a pipeline kind of sounds good right now because it just cost me $100 to fill up my truck, and that may drive some political will our way, but you never know. Trudeau's a stubborn man, doesn't like to apologize for much, so we'll see how it goes.
Now, Dave, this past week was designated the Economic Development Week in Alberta. So part of what Minister Doug Schweitzer talked about this week was the prolonged vacancy rate in downtown Calgary. And I believe the vacancy rate was almost 33%. You're in Calgary. What have you been seeing in Calgary?
A lot of people back to work now. The traffic is certainly raised since people stopped working from home. But I don't see a lot of people moving into downtown. Big companies like Amazon and whatnot, they're investing in Alberta. They're creating billion-dollar centers, but they're not doing it in downtown Calgary. They're doing it in surrounding communities, Rocky View and Foothills and stuff like that, because they don't want to get stuck paying the extravagant taxes that lead them into Calgary. So I will give credit to the UCP. They have done a good job in attracting billions and billions of dollars worth of new investments the last several months. That's not doing downtown Calgary any good, I can tell you that. I think bottom line is people are afraid to come to downtown Calgary because it's getting out of control with junkies and people open use injection sites and stuff like that. So it's pretty scary. They have set up a thing called the Core Project, which is looking at trying to reduce that massive number of office vacancies, 33%. They're trying to get it below that. They're changing empty high rises into low cost housing, getting people off the street that way. But no, that's going to create its own problem because wherever there's low cost housing, there seems to be the social disorder that follows. So yeah, it's not looking good for downtown Calgary at the moment. But hey, let's be bright on the future. We got a hockey team on its way to win the Stanley Cup. We have tens of thousands of fans going back down to the Red Mile on game day. So city's buzzing with that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And better news, the Oilers may get eliminated quickly. So the city will be elated at that when that happens.
Oh, there you go. And the Stampede is back this summer.
Stampede is back. The parade is back. Hopefully the streets will be full and get some action going on in the bars around the town and on the grounds. So
there you go.
I think everybody's looking forward to having a good party in July.
Totally, just in time for summer. Some happy news there. That's fantastic. That's all the time we have for today, Dave. But thank you so much for joining us here once again.
Always a pleasure, Jeanette. Thank you for asking me.
Many of us were raised to become diligent and work very hard, but hopefully we don't miss out on how to have a little bit of fun and play along the way. Today's guest has a lot to say about this. Courtney Ellis is a co-pastor for Presbyterian Church in Southern California and is author of Happy Now, Let Playfulness Lift Your Load and Renew Your Spirit. That sounds pretty good. Courtney, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, you're right that putting time aside for play is very important. Why do you say that?
It's important because we often think of play as a luxury item, but play is this wonderful, wonderful opportunity to unlock all sorts of things in our brains. It brings us greater creativity, innovation, connection, and most importantly, joy.
And play is really important, especially right now during the pandemic. A lot of people feeling depressed, anxious, stressed out. Let's talk a bit about that, the importance of play.
Play is such a powerful tool because God has created our brains in this way that they just light up when we play. And we think of play sometimes as we're either playing or we're not. But the fact is we can engage in many behaviors playfully. You can wash dishes playfully. You can get your kids ready for school playfully. You can have a playful conversation. And each of these things gives us this wonderful little boost, little lift that makes the rest of our days that much easier.
So why do you say that play is key to understanding ourselves and the God who created us?
It's key to understanding ourselves because God has wired our brains in such a way that they just light up when we play. It helps us make greater connections. It's a key to learning more quickly and having those learning lessons stick. And it's also one of the easiest and fastest ways we connect with both one another and with God.
With whom shall we be playful with, Courtney? Our spouse, our kids, our friends, maybe extended family?
You can play with anyone. And that's the beautiful thing is if you've ever had a fun conversation with someone who's checking your groceries out at the grocery store or the barista at the coffee shop or your pastor or your boss or your kids, when we play, it's not just a ball game or a board game. It's saying, let's look at this problem a little differently. Let's think outside the box. Let's go to a different restaurant for dinner rather than the one we always do. And it's that innovation that unlocks this stream of connection and joy.
How do you think play is really evolved or changes from a child to when we become mature adults?
I love that question because kids play so naturally. Kids are born to play. They're born into play. That's how they work. That's how they learn. But the older we get, the more we start to think, no, that's childish. I'm not going to function in that capacity anymore. But when we stop playing, we stop learning, we stop growing. And so adults are free to play just as much. We just have to give ourselves that permission. Sometimes if you're stuck on a problem, have you noticed if you go for a walk, the answer comes to you, and it's not because you tried harder, it's because you got a change of scenery. That's an act of play, that creative innovation that unlocks us from when we're stuck.
So Courtney, any thoughts on how play can really help us manage our stress and anxiety a little better?
It's one of the easiest, quickest tools. I tell people if you're stuck, if you can play for 10 seconds or 1 minute, even that much can help unstick you. At our church office, we have a big Scrabble board on the wall. And sometimes when I'm stuck on a problem, I'll go over and take a turn. And suddenly that part of my brain got a little workout and the problem now seems easier. So it doesn't have to be hours and hours. It can be as simple as going for a walk, looking out the window, losing to your colleagues in Scrabble, one turn at a time.
I have to tell you, since I got a dog a few weeks ago, I'm learning a lot about playtime. Going for walks and just having fun with my pooch, my puppy here. Now, Courtney, some people may have grown up thinking about God as a very stern figure who never wanted us to have any fun. Now, you feel that this idea may have missed the mark.
Absolutely. It's easy to read, especially the Old Testament, as this list of do's and don'ts. But the fact is, every commandment, every instruction that we find in the Bible is designed to free us. So God says, don't touch the hot stove, not because God's trying to ruin our fun, but because it's really hard to enjoy life when our hands are all burnt to a crisp. So all of the Bible is in service of the end of what God wants for us, which is joy and connection with the Lord, connection with our neighbors. Sin severs that connection, but God's righteousness and healing reestablish that. And play is one of the ways that that can happen.
Do you believe that play can actually help us to become more innovative?
Absolutely. There are so many studies. I got to do all this research with these play scientists, which sounds like the best job ever, actually, a play scientist. But what they've discovered is to learn something new often takes us 100 to 200 times. You practice that song on the piano or you learn that new recipe 100 to 200 times before it becomes second nature. If you learn that thing playfully, you set it to music or you do a little dance or you do it as part of a game, that is cut down tenfold. So it takes us 10 to 20 times rather than 100 to 200 times. And we know this with our kids. We teach them through play, but with adults, we think, oh, we'll drill the facts or I'll sit down and I'll read this. But the fact is that play helps us to learn, to innovate, to make those connections much faster and in ways that are much more fun.
Do you think, I'm glad you brought that up when it comes to connecting with people as we work our way out of the pandemic, do you think maybe board games will be reborn once again, playing games like Monopoly and Risk and Trouble or whatever, because we can connect and actually see people and have fun playing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had to make all of these investments in our church on our way out of the pandemic. And we have live stream technology and we have better speaker system and we repainted our campus. But the best investment was we purchased a few ping pong tables. And they can be outdoors. We're in Southern California, but after church now, we have these families who stick around and they laugh and they play. And then there's hey, see you next week. And families who might come to church once a month are like, I have to come back next week because I have to beat so-and-so in ping pong. Fellowship that leads us to worship that leads us to connection, all centered around something that seems so silly, but actually God is using to build the kingdom.
When I was younger, my game was 8-ball, playing lots of pool. That was a lot of fun I found with my college mates, right? Now, if seriousness breeds fear and worry, Courtney, what really does happiness breed?
Happiness breeds all good things. The fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. When we are happy, we are more open to the things of God. We tend to be looking up. And it doesn't mean we can never be sad. Happiness and sadness are two sides of the same coin. And to be in touch with one, we have to be in touch with the other. But to live into the joyful freedom that God offers is something that we are called to do. Paul says, rejoice always. And then he says, I will say it again. In case you didn't get it the first time, I will say it again. Rejoice. But we can't always will our way into happiness, which is why my book is all about play, because play leads us there gently in a way that is fun, in a way that is engaging. We don't have to force it. We can just try something new.
Let it happen organically, that's right. Now, do you think that playfulness can in some way help promote spiritual growth?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the ways I talked about earlier that it helps us learn, we're memorizing 1 Corinthians 13 together as a congregation. And some people can just sit down and learn it, but other people, they're setting it to a song or they're setting it to a beat and they're finding they learn it more quickly by playing. But that's true of almost any spiritual practice you can think of. For so many years, I would sit down and say, okay, 45 minutes, me and my Bible, very focused. But that's not the only way we can connect with God. Now, sometimes I'll listen to the Bible on tape while I'm out for a walk. And I find that I'm learning scripture, but I'm also seeing the beauty of God's creation. We can think outside the box. And when we engage in spiritual practices playfully and in a way that's less prescriptive and rigid, sometimes God meets us in really powerful and profound new ways.
So, Courtney, I'm getting the impression from you seriously here that play is pretty important in our daily lives, which is awesome. But you say, on the other hand, super fun people can terrify you. Why do you say that?
So I grew up in a family of sisters. We all played ice hockey and they were better than I was because they're adrenaline junkies. And so they're the like, let's do the polar bear plunge and let's just get after it. And what I learned in studying for this book was that we all have different play styles. And some people's play style is confetti out of a t-shirt cannon. It's polar bear plunge. It's ride the roller coaster. And for some others, their play style is more quiet. They're the crossword people. They're the bird watching people. And both of those things are valid. And God can use both of those. And so sometimes those big, loud, super fun people can scare off those of us who are a little quieter in our play. And we might think, well, that's not fun. I'm just not a playful person. You are. Everyone is. But we're all playful in a different way.
Now, Courtney, your book, Happy Now, centers around 10 invitations to play. Can you share some of those examples?
I would love to. So I'll go over 3 briefly. The first is to rest well. We don't play well when we're exhausted. And I work with a lot of young parents, a lot of young moms, and they'll say, I can't even think about playing. I'm so tired. And I say, I think God wants you to take a nap. I think God wants you to leave the dishes for a minute and just rest. Playfulness starts with God's gift of Sabbath, where we lay down our tools and we let ourselves be loved. So rest is very important. The second invitation of play is to do useless things. Nobody needs to do a jigsaw puzzle. But sometimes that jigsaw puzzle is the thing that your mind needs to rest and recover. So don't monetize your hobbies. Just have a hobby because you love to have a hobby. Just enjoy things that are useless. Bake cookies because you like cookies, not because you're going to sell them. And final invitation is to fail regularly. Playfulness gives us the opportunity to try things. And sometimes those things will fail. And as we learn that failure isn't fatal, we become much more creative, able to try new things and discover some things that will work because we've tried. Elon Musk, the famous billionaire entrepreneur, says that if you aren't failing regularly, you're not trying hard enough. And I love that lesson because often we think if I can't do it, I shouldn't do it. Well, if I can't paint a masterpiece, I'm not going to pick up my paints. Just paint for the joy of it, paint for the fun of it. You don't have to hang it up when you're done.
So why do you think we have such a hard time embracing playfulness as adults? And does this maybe have an effect on our kids?
It does. Life has a way of kind of draining the play out of us because now there's a mortgage and there are groceries and the raccoon got into the garbage cans again, right? And it's hard to be playful when life is just so hard. It's so exhausting. And so what I tell adults to think about is, what did you love to do as a child? What gave you joy? Were you the Lego kid, or were you the baseball kid, or were you the girl who loved to draw? And to think about how you might integrate that into your life now, to give yourself permission to go back to those days of joy, because that's still a part of you and that's still in there. And kids have wonderful lessons to teach us. When a kid throws a ball at you, do you catch it and throw it back? Or do you say, no, we don't have time? Because you have 30 seconds. Everybody has 30 seconds. So to accept those invitations and see kids and grandkids and neighbor kids as the gifts that they are, that remind us that life is beautiful and it doesn't have to be all that serious all the time.
Amen. Courtney, I've chatted with a lot of mature students who've gone back to college and university, people in their 30s and 40s, and they tell me they have to learn how to learn again. So if somebody who hasn't had a playful spirit and they want to relearn how to play again as a mature adult, what do you say to that person? Where do they start?
Yeah, start where you feel joy. Think about where you felt a spark of joy recently. And maybe you think, I saw a bird out the window and I thought, I want to learn more about that bird. Get yourself a pair of binoculars and go bird watching. Think about what you love to do as a child. Or if those paths sound like I'm not sure where to start, think of someone in your life who you love, who loves you, and ask them what they love to do and if they'll invite you to go along with them. And those are the funniest parts of my book. I asked everybody I know, will you take me to do something you love to do? And I ended up places I would never go otherwise. I ended up at an extreme cycling class. I ended up at an archery range. I ended up at an improv class where I was like, please tell me there are no cameras because this isn't going to go well. But what I learned was I loved some of these things and I would do them again, but I didn't love others. But I connected with those people and saw the sparks of joy that this play brought to them, and that brought me joy. So whether or not you stumble into your new favorite thing, you'll form a connection with someone you love, and that is a great step along the journey toward greater playfulness in your own life.
Courtney Ellis is the author of Happy Now, Let Playfulness Lift Your Load and Renew Your Spirit. And you can pick up her book at CourtneyBEllis.com. Courtney, thanks so much for joining us today from Southern California.
Thanks for having me, Hal. It was a joy.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.